Welcome to Visionaries Global Media, your number one source for podcasting entertainment. Visionaries Global Media, envisioning excellence on a global scale.
Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of It's Our House podcast. And today you've got me, Fazza, and we've got Mr. Lawson. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you very much. Today we don't have Mr. D's with us, but all our love is with him, and we'll see him soon. So take care of yourself, buddy. Before we go on to introduce our fantastic guest, we just want to give a shout out to our sponsor. That's WrestlingPins.BigCartel.com. Wrestling Pins, WRASSLIN. Pins.BigCartel.com. They've got pins like The Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and much, much more. Just head on over and add the promo code IOHPOD15 for 15% off your order. That's IOHPOD15 for 15% off your order. Mr. Lawson's looking for them, but
basically my house is currently like a working environment because it's like I've got an extension put on and everything's everywhere. This is why I'm on this side of the room today, because my gym stuff is on that side of the room. So I would normally, but I can't.
Signal didn't go very well.
Carry on.
But today we've got the maestro of the mat, the authority in the squared circle. We have Mr. Thomas Kearins. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you very much for having me. Good intro. Good stuff.
Thank you very much. I've spent weeks on these intros.
You've clearly been taking tips from Simon last week, so well done. Thanks very much.
It's all right. I told him I was coming for his job. You see, that's why.
Well, he better be worried.
How you doing, pal?
I'm doing good, thanks. How are you guys?
Yes,
good,
yes.
Man. How does it feel to be back?
Yeah, it feels good. I mean, back and away and then kind of off again. I mean, public facing, wise, we're back, we're on the network and stuff. It's a kind of backlog of content we managed to film when restrictions were partially lifted at the tail end of last year. But as you all know, obviously, we're back in them. So everything's kind of stopped again for the moment. So in a way, we are back, which is great. Everybody can watch us weekly with fresh content at WWE Network on Saturday afternoons. But for the people that are actually doing it, we're still sitting at home. So it's bittersweet in a way. It's great to see us on there, but chomping at the bit to get back to filming some new content.
I'll bet you
chomping at the bit to get back to an event.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. I was just looking at pictures earlier, and the last show that I done with a crowd was March 14th, I think it was, in the Pavilion. And it was crazy. Then we knew that things were kind of going down, hill. So we kind of savoured it and, thankfully didn't take it for granted and kind of soaked it in, especially in a venue like the Glasgow Pavilion, which is, historical in itself. Yeah. But just looking at those pictures again, bittersweet to think, it was incredible and, 1,500 fans. But now you're lucky if, this side of the year we're going to be back with fans. You don't know. So it's just a bit of a waiting game, but it's for safety at the end of the day.
Definitely.
It's funny, I've been watching a lot of Royal Rumbles, obviously, because in Royal Rumble season, and I was watching 2021, and to think that was 12 months ago is incredible. Like, you're looking at it going...
Madness.
You think, I don't know why, because obviously in our life, the majority of it we have has been with fans, but for all of a sudden it just looks weird. Even when you're watching the football, or for American fans, soccer, when you've been watching that, it's crazy just to see fans, and it's shit. That's the only way you can put it.
I know, it's difficult. I mean, everybody's got New Year's resolutions, and probably everybody's is the same, but I was trying my hardest this year to pick 3 things that I was grateful for every day, because it was so easy to slip into that rut of looking at how bad things were. But, it's easy to do that, and then you catch a memory on Facebook or a throwback and you realise, Tuesday coming is going to be a year to the day of the last square goal for ICW, which of course had fans in SWG3. And then we obviously had one more event at the start of March, and that was us. So it's crazy to think in March last year, we thought, things will be normal by next year. There were summer concerts planned, things in August, and it looked like by Christmas we'd be back to normal. And it's just crazy to think that, a couple of days away from being a year to the square go and things are still looking pretty tight.
Yeah.
Most important question is, what's today's 3 things you're grateful for?
Well, it's not the end of the day yet, so I can't...
This podcast is one of them.
Oh, well, that's number 1, obviously. Of course. But I mean, like everybody else, you know, your health is probably up there as soon as
Yes.
you start your countdown to number one or your count up, depending on how you look at it. Thankfully, I mean, touch wood, things are obviously rubbish for a lot of people, and I've sadly known people who have caught COVID. Thankfully, I don't know many people that have had it as bad as certain others that, you know, you hear of online and stuff like that. So it's a big burden for everybody, because it kind of feels like, well, it's a waiting game every time you go out the house. You know, is it something that I'm going to catch? Am I going to pass on to somebody that I love? And I suppose that's why it's so important that you follow all the guidance. But it doesn't make it any easier at the end of the day, especially when you can't see parents and family and stuff like that.
So, and especially in the working environment that you're in, that relies on face-to-face confrontation.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, no kidding. I mean, on top of refereeing, I do a lot of office work for ICW, and I'm a marketer outside of ICW. So everything just now is remote from me, with the exception of obviously refereeing, which you would have a pretty tough job of doing from behind the desk in the kitchen.
You're telling me that you're not doing what Billy Kirkwood does and does it from his house? Is that what you're telling me?
We did try to put a green screen behind me and have me sliding in to count the pinfall, but it didn't work as well as we thought. I know we ended up, I just looked horrendous, so we thought, no, we'll get him in for filming. But yeah, I've been working from home since the end of March, so yeah, it's crazy to think we're approaching a year, but those, you know, few months where we were able to film, you know, with safety precautions and protocols in place, were, you know, a welcomed break, which was funny in a way, because you think going back to your work is typically anything but a break, but it was a break from the kind of lackluster lifestyle that everybody's been living for the past 12 months. So
I'm in the railway, so for me, it's never really stopped, because trains have always have to still keep moving to keep going. So
I know there's a lot of guys, I mean, even with the wrestling, and especially now that there hasn't been any work for a year, a lot of guys have turned to other jobs, you know, understandably. I mean, and a lot of guys have been working non-stop, and there's nothing but respect for those people. I mean, it's easy enough for me to complain about working behind a desk, you know, Monday to Friday, you know, working from home, but the real people that are actually out there doing the jobs that everybody needs are people like yourself. Otherwise, things wouldn't go. You know, things wouldn't tick over.
Yeah. I wouldn't put Lawson in there. Don't put Lawson in there.
To be fair, every Thursday everyone was clapping for me, so I'm not really that bothered.
So can I just double check that I'll get double wage for this after saying that? Yeah.
Free train rides for life.
Just make sure we edit that bit out when I ask that.
So obviously, you're on the podcast. We want to get to know a bit about yourself, so you can obviously tell the people out there what you do. And one of the things that we like to really just get right in with is people's first experience and memories of wrestling. You know, mine was the debut of Kane. So what was your first memory of wrestling?
I was trying to think earlier, because I know it's a question that comes up even talking amongst friends, and I've always found it difficult to pinpoint. I mean, I remember, my very earliest memory of it is my mum took me over to her friends, and her son liked it, and it was on TV, and I remember it being The Rock, and it was the WWF, certainly the Attitude Era, because it was, you know, tail end of the 90s. And I remember thinking, you know, this is pretty cool, but I don't remember, I mean, because I was so young, probably being hooked by it, but thinking back, I mean, I had all the action figures, I've got the WCW Nitro Arena set up and all that, so either I did continue to like it or I didn't, and my mum thought I did and just bought me all the toys. But I don't really remember much between that and then it was the tail end of primary school, I want to say, and I had a wee pal called Michael that loved it, and I remember going over to his house at the weekend, and he had just bought his mum had bought him the WrestleMania 20 DVD. And we watched that. So, I mean, that must have been about 2004, I want to say. So I would have been 9. Yeah, so I'd be about 9. So, yeah, I suppose I kind of fell out of it and then back into it about 9, 10 when my friend had been watching it. And then the first kind of, although he had that DVD, it was kind of bits and bobs. And I remember him really liking The Undertaker. But the first match that I ever saw that I remember really being captivated by was Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero at Mania 21 in the Staples Center. And that kind of supercharged my love for wrestling. I couldn't get enough of Rey Mysterio. SmackDown at the time was well, contrasting opinions, but at the time, because I was just getting into it again, I thought that kind of ruthless aggression era, rather, was really captivating. So from there, I was hooked. And then, yeah, everybody thought it was a phase like everything else, but just not something I grew out of.
No.
By the way, that era, that's because for me, I think it was around about WrestleMania 17. I think I kind of stopped, or tailed off from watching it, and I got back into it around that same time. But that SmackDown at that time was unbelievable when you look back. Like Batista, Rey Mysterio, Guerrero, Kennedy, Undertaker, Orton. You know, the list was endless. It was for me. I thought Raw was always the headline show. But that's kind of what got me back into with that SmackDown roster, because it was just so good. Friday night was just epic.
Yeah, I think it's probably really easy for people to criticize things like storylines, but for being a kid and seeing these guys, like you say, that were literal superstars, I mean, they were massive. And then you had people like Rey Mysterio that maybe didn't have the size but had the character and all that interest there. For somebody that was just getting back into wrestling as a kid, I mean, there was nothing better in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really the first memories I can think of, and then just kept rolling with it.
Excellent. So obviously you've moved on now, and you're involved actually in the wrestling business yourself. So did you always want to be a referee, or did you have any aspirations or dreams to actually be a wrestler and get into the ring that way?
I mean, probably anybody that you ask that's involved in wrestling or even watches wrestling has some kind of daydream where they think about being a wrestler. Personally, for me,
I still do.
He's doing it every week.
So I don't blame you. But yeah, my parents got me a trampoline shortly after I kind of started watching wrestling again. And then obviously, like everybody else, any kind of trampoline or crash mat you find or anything like that, you start wrestling on it. So I would wrestle, my friends, and think I was like Jeff Hardy or something, which was hilarious because I was already, I'm 6'1" now, so I was already getting taller, which was hilarious. And then to try and pretend to be Rey Mysterio was even more ludicrous. So yeah, did that. And then a few years after that, I was about 12, and my parents worked with Adam Shame, who people will now know as Coach Tripp in ICW. They worked in the same building as him. He and my dad got kind of chatting and told him that he helped run a training school in Linwood called Area 52, which I know Simon was talking about last week. It's the same training centre that was run by SWA. So I originally went to train there to be a wrestler. I mean, laughable again at the age of 12. You're not going to be, you're lucky to get on ring crew at 12. So yeah, I went there, trained for a few years. But because of my age and then like exams and everything else that you get from becoming a teenager, I kind of fell away from it and I got braces and stuff. So obviously my mum didn't want my teeth getting knocked in my throat. So as a way of kind of still being involved in wrestling, but not actually wrestling, I started refereeing, because that's always been a kind of natural progression route for trainees to begin in a training centre as a referee, to get that kind of first-hand experience of learning how to plan a match, what goes into calling something on the fly, and all the other bits and bobs and kind of road bumps that you would come over with a match. So a lot of people kind of go through that transition, go back into training to be a wrestler. But I loved refereeing so much that I just stuck with it. And because of my exams at school kind of continuing and stuff like that, I didn't have enough time to dedicate to actually doing it. Yeah. And as Simon said last week, I mean, an element of it is, if you really want to do something, you're going to do it. And I think the reality of it is that it's easier for me to say that, my exams were there and everything else, but your Noam Dars and your Kenny Williams and guys like that were similar ages and look where they are now. So yeah. I think, being honest with myself, my heart wasn't in the wrestling, but it absolutely was with the refereeing, and the rest is history, really.
Brilliant.
Always good to hear about those ones. Noam Dar,
I love those stories.
Fantastic, by the way, as well. I think he's
fantastic.
So you're the first referee you've had on, which congratulations, by the way. So there you go. Okay.
Thank you very much.
I always genuinely believe that referees are the unsung heroes in regards to anything that goes on. So how much input do you have into the match or the choreography of them as well? And do you have to have the plannings with them before it goes ahead, or do you know kind of like what the steps are going to be, or is it kind of done on the fly?
Mm-hmm. At the start, very little, because as you can imagine, not only being a new referee, but anybody at 12 or 13, 14 years old telling you what to do, even if they've been doing it since they came out of the womb, you wouldn't listen to them. So at the beginning, not very much.
Just go, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it's hilarious. I mean, I tell people the story when you get chatting about Adrian, Lionheart. Mm-hmm. One of my first interactions with him was at Clydebank Town Hall, and it must have been about 2008 or 9. I mean, this is before I started refereeing. I was just helping out, and I thought, you're told you're a runner for the night, so you go. At the time, Clydebank Town Hall had changing rooms away downstairs, and it was pretty grim looking. It was like a bit of a dungeon. It's been all kind of done up now and it's changed, but you had to go down a set of stairs, and then one room led to the other, and it was like Alice in Wonderland or something. So yeah, go and get Lionheart, please. Okay, no problem. In my head, I'm thinking I'm the big I am, run downstairs, 12, 13 years old. And I'm, he's walking down the corridor, shout, Lionheart, upstairs. And he just turned down and he went, he did, the whole eyebrow up, excuse me. And I was like, Lionheart, upstairs, please. And he went, better. He continued walking. And I always thought that was funny. And it kind of set the tone for, sometimes, and I mean, all the time, really, depending on what your character's like. And at the time, being such a young kid, I thought I was really ballsy, but having somebody that was in a respectable position like that check you so early on was probably good.
Yeah, definitely.
But sorry, what was the question? I'm talking about all sorts of stuff already. How much having the matches?
Yes.
Now, I mean, I'm in a position now, thankfully, where I've got about a decade of experience that's behind me that I can maybe suggest something for a match, but in no way, shape, or form am I in any position to start off by telling them what to do in a match. I mean, they're the wrestlers, and more often than not, I'm working with some really experienced guys. I will maybe put something forward if I'm working on a show with maybe trainees or younger talent. I've done a few shows like showcases and stuff like that. I'll maybe suggest something. A common one is maybe that one match is doing something very similar to the other, in which case as a referee I can stand in there and say, or step in and say, look, I've just spoken to match one, they're doing a cut-off spot or an international or some kind of they're working the leg or whatever, and then maybe match 4 is wanting to do the same thing, and it's just about that communication. But with the more experienced guys, again, it's just a third person there to offer an opinion if it maybe comes up. But I'm not one for really interjecting myself when it's not called for. But there is an element of it there.
Yeah. So do you know the endings and things like that before they come out?
Yeah. So we'll know the ending. We'll know if there's any spots involving the referee. Basically, anything that we need to know that would influence our performance. Again, sometimes if they are working a particular body part, maybe good practice to check in so that we know and stuff like that. But we'll always know the finish, and if we don't, then like the wrestlers would, you call it in the fly out there, which is pretty difficult when you've got a millisecond to swipe your hand or stop it. Yeah, more often than not, we do know.
Brilliant. So
I always wonder, like, we'll come to it in a minute, but like with the Undertaker and Brock Lesnar match at WrestleMania 30, I mean, if you were the referee at that point, you're that's going to be that. If you do that third hit, that's going to be it. Because there'll be a lot. Because who was it? Was it Mike Choate or something like that?
No, it was Chad Patton, who is one of the main Raw referees. But I actually had the privilege of working underneath him, and I had my tryout for NXT UK, and we had a bit of a question time, and that kind of came up. And it's something else. It's easy to get into talking to other UK referees, and a lot of us do have a wealth of experience behind us, but it's another world over there when you talk to people that have performed in front of 70,000 fans with two of the biggest superstars on the planet, never mind wrestlers.
Yeah.
So talk about sitting under the learning tree for a weekend.
Definitely. So obviously you mentioned WWE there, so obviously we asked the question last week, but how does it feel when you're sat there and that ICW is going to be on the WWE network, the biggest network in the whole entire wrestling industry?
As well, how long did you, because Simon slipped up last week and said that they knew way before it was announced. So how quickly did you know? Because your background, I'm expecting you to be high up in the knowledge ladder. Yeah,
I mean, it was something that we knew about in advance, of course. I mean, depending on who you ask, I mean, it was quite a while, but yeah, so in that respect, it's difficult to kind of say that there was a point where we all kind of jumped up for joy and had a few drinks to celebrate, because it was a gradual process. I mean, there's no secret that we had a working relationship with the WWE, more publicly when Triple H showed up in the Cardiff show. So there was never a secret that we had that relationship there. So I think it was only a matter of time before something like that happened. We knew about it obviously in advance, and for people like myself who work in the office that manage the comms kind of public facing side of the organisation, we would work with WWE in terms of that side of things. So it was a gradual process. I wish I could say there was one day where we all went to the pub and had a bit of a celebratory drink, but it didn't work like that. We were just privileged to be working with such a massive company, and to still be doing so is it's pretty crazy, especially during such wild times. Never in my wildest dreams would I think that we would have been on the WWE network in the middle of a pandemic. It might as well have been written by a wrestling producer. It's absolutely wild, but like Drew's title win, I mean, of course, this is the way it's going. You know, nothing could go smooth for a company like ICW.
I know. I think as well with when one of the you say Triple H as well, but one that I brought to mind as well was NXT UK when it first started in Blackpool, and it had the tournament. A lot of them were from ICW. Like Wolfgang was there, and he was obviously predominantly ICW. And I also remember Mark Dallas was in the crowd, and they showed Mark Dallas, and that's something that WWE don't normally do. They show like another promotion as such, and they said like ICW owner, etc.
Yeah, I think that was a respect thing. I mean, WWE are, you know, they're the biggest wrestling company in the world for a reason. I listened to an interview with Freddie Prinze Jr. recently where he was speaking about his time in wrestling, and he's saying, you know, show business, you know, one word's bigger than the other. And I think that's a testament to the way that WWE operate. I mean, they obviously created NXT UK with a particular vision, and that included working closely with promotions like ICW and Progress. And I think it's a testament to the way that they do business that there was that working relationship there, rather than, you know, what everybody on the internet starts talking about, which is that they're trying to take over territories or try to do this or try to do that. Listen, there's no bad word that I can say about the WWE. I mean, Mick Foley was pulled from our first Hydro show, understandably, because of Survivor Series at the time. But WWE didn't have to allow Finn Balor to appear at ICW, especially in an arena with, you know, over 6,000 fans.
Exactly.
Or what people, you know, consider an indie promotion. So I think it's all about respect, and I think that having Mark and Duncan, who operate ICW, in the crowd was just another kind of sign of that in the way that they do business.
And I think as well that what also by doing that, it gave one of the best moments for ICW when Finn Balor was announced with Dallas and Jester. That was amazing, that moment, because it was just, you didn't know what was coming, and it was like, oh yeah, fuck, I was Prince Devitt, you know.
It's fantastic. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the YouTube kind of rabbit hole when you start watching clips from COVID. I was doing it last night, and you know, you forget, you would certainly not about the Finn Balor announcement, but you forget about those pops. And it's even better when, you know, Adam Carell, who kind of heads our video production, he does an incredible job of kind of editing it in a way that you see the video that would play on screen that then kind of has an overlay transition into showing the audience reaction. And it's difficult to ever show and get the vibe for what that's like live. But, you know, Adam does a pretty darn good job. And yeah, videos like that just remind you why you're involved in the business.
100%. And I always say, because as you know as well, like ICW is different to any other show. So I've been to like WWE shows, and I've been to like other ones as well. But an ICW show is kind of the party atmosphere. It's a weird way to explain. Faz, as well as Chris, Thomas, can you believe weren't ICW fans when I first met them?
Nope.
Arseholes.
No, I was a wrestling journalist as well.
How do I leave this?
Exactly. And Faz, you just leave it, mate. I'll just be Thomas. Continue.
I've got to stay. I'm recording.
Let you stay.
So, but like, they've not been to an ICW show, but I know for a fact when they do go, it's going to be a totally surreal atmosphere that they've ever experienced before. Because
can't wait.
It's like it's like an old ECW arena. It's like an old ECW show where it's raw emotion. You know, it's just they tell you how it is. And that's something that you don't get anymore, and it's great to see, and it's amazing to even be at.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to kind of describe an ICW show. I mean, your parents are kind of the typical ones that everybody uses as an example to try and, you know, how would you describe it to your mum or dad if they asked? And it's a cross between soap opera and sports and that kind of Glaswegian vibe when you go on a night out and everybody's kind of talking to one another and you get to know the people that are beside you. You know, you're excited for the night to come, and it's all anticipation. And more often than not, nights out in Glasgow anyway, depending on what night of the week you went out before COVID, it would maybe end up totally bombing. But ICW, to be able to run a Sunday consistently for over 10 years and draw consistently as well, is a testament to the kind of show that we put on and the storylines that we tell and the characters that we have, which is also a huge one. You know, nobody in ICW, you know, doesn't have a character. Everybody's somebody that people can either invest in, care about, or want to be out the building, which I think adds to it as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, 100%. So you're on the network, so we've watched a lot of matches. We've just recently talked about The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar, but what is it you feel like when you're watching, because you'll see matches differently to what we watch matches.
Mm-hmm.
You're watching it from the referee's point of view as well. So when you see a referee make a mistake in other promotions, and then how do you recover from those mistakes if it happens to you, for instance? The one I'm thinking of is I was watching Taker's, the first one with Broken Skulls, and they were talking about when the referee was doing, it was meant to be it was a 1-2 and he was meant to kick out, but Taker forgot to kick out at the time and the referee stopped and then he jumped and it was obvious. For you, what would that be looking like, if that makes sense?
It's tricky. I mean, it's really easy for people to say just count to 3, which, of course, if somebody doesn't kick out, that's what you're trained to do. But likewise, different matches create different pressures and stuff like that, right? So a match on a showcase event in front of maybe friends and family are going to be more forgiving of a slight slip up than maybe a Fear and Loathing at the Hydro. So while you approach that with the same mentality, and every show could be your last, so you need to put 100% in, it's really difficult sometimes to be put in a position where you're maybe the one that slips up. In terms of other referees, I can't comment. I can only say from my own perspective, I've slipped up a lot of times, and it's not something that you ever think is going to happen, and especially this late in the game, which is hilarious at 26. And by no means am I anywhere near where I'd like to be in terms of my experience level. I've tried as hard as I could for the last 10 years, but I can't sit here and criticise anyone else. So it's easy to say, that referee should have done this, that referee should have done that, but you don't know till you're in there. And just like wrestlers, make mistakes, maybe slip, maybe hurt themselves, it's never deliberate. Likewise, thankfully, we've not really got anybody's safety in our hands. So the biggest mistake we can make is to not call a match appropriately. So it's a kind of case by case basis. It's certainly happened to me, and it's difficult sometimes to say count to 3 when maybe you're prepared to swipe that hand. It's a big massive falsy, and the finish isn't up for another 5 minutes, and you get somebody in your earpiece telling them to keep going. It's difficult because then you got to juggle things. It used to be that you wouldn't have an earpiece, you'd have a watch, or the timekeeper would be cueing you. But in ICW now, we use IFBs that allow us to, hear the producer or the timekeeper backstage, and they'll be able to feed us things. So you're juggling the action in the ring. You're juggling, more often than not, the crowd heckling you, and then you've got the producers in the back feeding you stuff into your ear, which more often than not differs from what's happening in the ring because they've got a particular vision. And because a lot of the stuff that we do is pre-taped, whilst the live audience might react differently, you've got to kind of remember, and it's a difficult kind of cross to bear, but the important thing at the end of the day is what's going to go up and down the WWE network.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if it means a slight mistake that hopefully can be edited that covers us on the network, then there's a sacrifice to be made there. But the ICW crowd aren't going to forgive you if you make a mistake.
Absolutely no chance.
So yeah, there's no hiding from it. You've just got to take it on the chin and try and improve for the next time. Thankfully, I work with such great people and talented men and women in ICW that anything that I make a mistake at, you've always got somebody there that will lend an ear to be able to kind of talk back and forth with me and tell me how to improve for the next time, especially having people that have now got that experience in WWE. I mean, your Wolfgangs and Mark Coffeys, Joe Coffeys, they're always willing to help, and who better to learn from on your roster?
Totally.
Definitely.
One question I've got for you though is why you kind of trained a wee bit, you're saying as a wrestler, why are you so fucking, when you get hit you're doing for hours? What's that all about?
I know. Well, I can't tell you. There must be some. It must be something.
It must be the shirt you're wearing. Is that what it is?
I'm starting to think they use a particular chemical in when they steep the canvas, and I'm starting to think, I've been reading a lot of articles recently that it can be damaging to you, put you to sleep for 10 to 15 minutes.
I love that though. I do love that. Every time you see it, bang, like I see it, you'll not be up for another 3 minutes anyway. That's what a fact.
I love it. I'll just go for a wee sleep sometimes and wait for somebody to come and nudge me.
Brilliant, brilliant. But before we proceed, I just want to give another shout out to our sponsor. It's wrestlingpins.bigcartel.com. That's wrestlingpins.bigcartel.com. WRASSLIN pins.bigcartel.com. They've got pins such as The Undertaker, Bret Hart, Stone Cold, Razor Ramon, and they're going to have many, 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 many more. Just head on over and put the promo code IOHPOD15 for 15% off your order. That's IOHPOD15 for 15% off your order. So going back, we were obviously talking about referees there. You are the unsung heroes. A lot of people don't really know what goes into the matches. You are juggling with a lot in the squared circle, and a lot of it just doesn't even get looked at. But, we've got top referees out there, Danny Davis, Bill Alonso, Teddy Long, and a lot of these are examples of referees that have gone on to do other roles within the industry. So as you grow within the industry, are you looking to take on other maybe on-screen roles other than refereeing?
Yeah, I think probably half of your question's right there. I would certainly look to take on other roles, but not particularly something that's kind of crowd-facing, on the shows.
You're not going to be general manager? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm not going to be a general manager, unfortunately. I think, referees typically, especially in WWE, their duties extend far beyond refereeing, and they'll be there, sometimes at the crack of dawn all the way till, the last person leaves the arena. If that's maybe ring crew or agenting or, timekeeping, or there's a multitude of tasks that they're kind of handed. Thankfully, ICW have an incredible team of people, so we've kind of got all bases covered. But Sean and I mean, we try to do as much as we can. More often than not, it's actually either Sean or Andy Wason who's red lightning on the earpiece to me, and vice versa when he's in the ring. So the referees, we do other stuff, but personally for me, I think outside of refereeing, with my office work in ICW, I enjoy that and I enjoy another aspect to the business. So I think if I ever called it a day on the refereeing side of things, I would still stay involved in wrestling, maybe from a marketing or comms kind of perspective. And I obviously would love to train referees at some point, but I think we've probably got a way to go in Scotland anyway for having what you would want to, be a class of referees, but it's still a pretty tight group for the moment. There's some great referees up north, Dennis Law and
He's
people
still
like
around,
that.
is he?
What's that? Sorry,
Dennis Law.
Yeah,
Man United.
No. I don't watch football, but I know enough to know he's certainly not a football player. He's closer to Norway than Glasgow, I think. But yeah, so I would love to do something like that, but it just depends really. This year's shown you, the last year anyway has shown you that any plans you have can be
thrown out the window.
Yeah, totally out the window at the click of a button. So I guess it's just a case of waiting to see what happens. It could be that something comes up that I've not thought of, but I would love to absolutely stay involved in wrestling way past refereeing.
Brilliant.
I think as well, though, one thing I would say, that you're saying you're 26, so in the last 10 years, you've seen the difference in Scotland, at least, with wrestling. I don't think in another 10 years it wouldn't be far away from doing a school as such for that kind of experience that you're after. I don't think that's unrealistic.
No, certainly not, especially if you're looking in the next decade, but it just depends really. I've been fortunate enough to do a training seminar recently for FPWA out in Fife, virtually of course, and I had about 15-20 students there for that. Excuse me, and that was great. It was really rewarding to be able to kind of pass down some kind of experience. I hope that I can give them some kind of value, either refereeing or maybe something they can take forward as a wrestler. So yeah, I would love to, absolutely. If the opportunity ever presented itself, I would love to do it.
Cool. So obviously, we talked about it with Simon, we talked about it with Billy. I'm going to say it again because I love talking about ICW, right? So you've had some amazing moments, and the ones I always keep bringing up would be Triple H at Cardiff with Pete Dunne, Drew Galloway coming back, Grado winning the title at Fear and Loathing. What would you say would be, while you were there, obviously, what would you say is your greatest moment that you've went, shit, this is decent?
That technical term.
Yeah, that is the technical term.
Aye. For me, it is anyway. Fucking hell, anyway. How good is that? I do every time I watch on the network.
I know. Aye. I mean, if you're from Glasgow, that's absolutely the technical term.
I'm from Edinburgh, so we kind of have a wee bit of a Ribena type way.
Aye, something like that.
Aye.
But yeah, I mean, it depends on when I mean, the timeline, when I get involved in ICW, I just turned 18. And that at the time, and I'm sure Simon spoke about it as well, I think he got involved in ICW maybe a year just before me.
Yeah.
And it was just as it was becoming popular. The first Fight Club had just aired, I think, or I want to say it was just about to air.
That one, the BBC.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was right then. Aye.
Yeah, so that kind of first big boom of, new eyes on ICW was around the time that I got the call. It was Jackie Polo who thankfully put me forward. I was quite friendly with him and Joe and Mark, people like that, Sweeney, and be working a lot on SWA with them and other smaller shows. And it was getting to the point where we would have shows and, you always think, or at least for me, I was like, oh, well, obviously, because I'm not 18 yet, that's why I'm not getting the shout. But then later found out they were sneaking Noam in the back door at 16. So I think somebody was lying to me somewhere. But yeah, we would do these smaller shows and they would come up and say, I don't know why you've not had a shout for ICW yet. And I didn't know either. I didn't really speak enough. I should have, but didn't speak enough to kind of the guys in ICW. Had never met Mark Dallas. So I didn't have that relationship there, maybe like other people. So they put me forward. Jackie had me go along on a Sunday. And the first match I refereed was Joe Coffey in an Ironman match. I had one match that night. Sorry, I tell a lie. It wasn't an Ironman match. I think it was leading up to one at the ABC that year. And yeah, Mark Dallas came up to me at the end of the night, shook my hand and said, welcome to ICW. So that was kind of it, really. Thankfully, I impressed them. And then, yeah, I've been working closely ever since.
So you're not a sexy bastard like Simon Cassidy then?
No, I can't say that was why I was hired, no. Certainly not back then. I mean, I don't know if you guys have saw any pictures that I've put up on Twitter in the last few months, but on top of the fact that, I mean, my hair looks semi-okay just now because of Jamie at Bad Guy brand. He kind of tidies it up and knows, look, we know how crazy your hair goes because it just goes like so curly that it kind of cuts it in a way that, look, we can get through at least 4 weeks here and then it's cut. So, I mean, I think we're about 4 weeks in here, so I've got another week before it goes crazy. But back then, I mean, they had me on the roster page as McLovin because at the time I wore glasses more often. I had really curly hair. And, yeah, I certainly was not getting the same kind of accolades as Simon Cassidy at that time. I think it took a few more years and a bit of tan and, I don't know, life experience. Any kind of stuff like that. So
a few miles on the road, that what took you. That bit more no baby face anymore.
No, certainly not. I mean, it's funny. You look back at old pictures and you think at the time you remember thinking, well, I'm 19, 20, I'm like really mature. And then looking back, you think, what was I thinking? Like, especially in wrestling, I mean, you're surrounded by giants, and even in normal life, you probably look back and think, oh, I was just way out of my depth there. But looking back in wrestling, it's even more so.
Be like, you next to Drew Galloway, hi, neighbour, son.
I know, he's, yeah, some people just have an aura, and I mean, whether or not it's the fact that he's who he is and he's a superstar and now, WWE champion, or the fact that he's the size of a tree. When he walks into a room, everybody stops and somebody's just come in that has something else about them.
Yeah.
I think as well about Drew though, like, I think he'd be the first to admit as well, when he first left WWE, he wasn't really on the highest standard, if that makes sense, because he was in the 3MB and all that kind of stuff. But when he came back to ICW, man, it just shook the whole, in Europe, it shook the whole world, because, I mean, what Foley was talking about on Steve Austin's podcast, about what's happening over in ICW. What I mean by that is Drew has this aura about, he's left WWE. He wasn't on the most amazing times when he left in regards to where he was in the roster, but he came over and he just took the whole European scene by storm. And look at him now. He's the top of the game.
Yeah, I mean that was no mistake. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to work out that Drew's obviously has taken the lessons he learned from WWE when he was first there, and outside of wrestling. I mean, and we talk about this a lot with ICW's roster. And we work on it with the newer talents, but outside of the ring, you've got to think about things like branding, how you promote yourself, how you carry yourself, how you enter the venue, how you interact with fans. All that contributes to you being a wrestler in this business. And I think that Drew choosing to come back to ICW, you know, there couldn't have been anything more on brand for somebody to have left WWE to show back up at the promotion that they left and were so closely tied with. Because, like, yeah, I mean, he still is, as WWE champion, he's still tied to ICW to a degree.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Certainly, you know, the benefit there is ultimately for ICW, and Drew knows that, and that's why he's so selfless when it comes to that kind of stuff, because he knows that he's helping us out. But yeah, I mean, he knew what he was doing when he came back that night. He knew he was shocking the world, and he made that mission statement that, you know, he was going to be wrestling outside of WWE, and he knew that ultimately he was going to go back there. So nothing was a mistake, and I don't think he surprised anyone that knew him when he did what he did. I mean, I'm sure there were doubters, you know, on the internet like everything else, but within a few short months and probably minutes, depending on if you watched the promo, you knew that he was the next big thing.
He looked different as well. The best thing I love about that is he was like to Mark Dallas, "Where's my phone call?" You know what I mean, because he was the one wanting to come back. You know, he was the one waiting for ICW to phone him, and Mark, out with respect, obviously wanted to give him a few weeks, which you can totally understand. But it's the fact that he was itching, he was clawing to get back to ICW when he first started.
Yeah, I mean, he's been public. I mean, very public about that he was pretty annoyed that Mark didn't phone him. But as you say, I mean, Mark's just a normal guy, and
exactly.
A lot of promoters can be pretty overbearing, and you know, it comes with the job. It comes with any kind of entertainment job. You know, if you get agents in music or anything like that, some people are, you know, everybody wants a piece of you. But I think the thing to remember there is, like, Mark and Drew were such close friends and continue to be during his time in WWE, that sometimes you don't want your friend. You know, it's hard to be a boss and a friend, but sometimes you just want your mate to check in and see how you're doing, and not, listen, mate, can I book you for this show? Because it's kind of like, you know, because it's not that, or you get somebody that goes, "Hi mate, how you doing? Just double checking you can do this date for us. Here's the fee, blah blah blah." And I think Mark didn't want to do that because he was just a regular guy and he was Drew's mate. But obviously Drew was probably chomping at the bit to come back. So, I mean, the stars aligned when he did it anyway, and it was what an incredible night.
He looked different as well, which was what amazed me. Like when he left WWE, he never had any body hair, all that kind of stuff, and he came back, he just looked raw and menacing, and kind of like someone you see on bloody Braveheart, you know what I mean, the film Braveheart.
Yeah,
he looked amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the point, isn't it, that you come back with a new look and, as I say, a new mission statement. But it was such a strange night because that was the same night that Still Game showed up.
That was right. Yeah. Jack and Victor and Bobby.
Yeah, not only was that a surprise, but then, you know, the referees and, you know, talents backstage, it was a pretty closely guarded secret that Drew was coming back. I know that everybody thinks that when things are put over on, you know, the Insane Fight Club, you know, when Drew came back and you watch it and you think, nah, like, everybody knew, but they really did. They snuck him in and they kept him downstairs along with, you know, Still Game, and they were there. And nobody really knew. I was only told, you know, look, when the lights go down, get out the ring. I didn't know. I was just told, look, Renfrew came back, he's cashing in, takes me out to the ring, and I was told, listen, when the lights go down, get out. And that was that. Lights come back up and everybody saw what happened.
That's amazing.
Because I remember he was on a podcast and he started saying, like, he was overly worried because the pop that Jack and Victor and Bobby got, he was like, oh shit, am I going to get the same? Like, you're fucking Drew Galloway.
I know, well, that's another example of an ICW show. I mean, if you wanted to pick out an ICW show that kind of captured the essence of what those three letters mean, I mean, what else is going to do that if it isn't, you know, the biggest star in ICW's history coming back to kind of assert his dominance as part of the indie scene again, on top of, you know, Jack Victor and Bobby the Barman coming out with ICW t-shirts, getting up in the top rope during their
Did a few moves as well, with, you know. They've done a few moves with Lionheart as well, with it, no?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, somebody had some kind of move, which doesn't surprise me. I mean, Greg Hemphill's a massive wrestling fan. Bobby, the barman, Gavin Mitchell, he you know, he keeps in touch with Mark and stuff like that. So, yeah, it was a fantastic night. I mean, what a buzz to be a part of, you know, behind and in front of the curtain. Just that's another thing. Like, I think there's this such a feeling of community with ICW that the wrestlers are in on it with the fans and the fans are in on it with the wrestlers. Yeah. And it's not so much about, you know, and I know other wrestling promotions have their purists and stuff, and I know we have an element of that at times. I think the wrestlers and the fans in ICW are just there to have a great night.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not really at the expense of picking apart a performance.
Yeah.
If somebody, as I said earlier, makes a mistake, then they'll call you for it. But it's not going to be to the detriment of the show, because by the time the next spot's happened, they've forgotten about that and they're just having a beer and, ready to get involved in action again.
It's not just that as well. Like the ICW fans, they know things like that are going to happen. So you make a laugh and a joke about it, and then you accept it and carry on, and you forget about it. You may have a laugh and joke about it at a later stage, like after the event or so, but it's not going to ruin their night or anything. It's not going to change their opinion on what the outcome of the actual event was.
No, not at all. And again, you've got to kind of stick to what the brand is, and the brand at that time, and more so hopes when we come back and we can allow fans back in the building, it will be back to what it was. But, because it is that kind of night out atmosphere, like the wrestlers know, they know the crowd they're playing to. And maybe if they were somewhere else in the UK in front of another crowd, they would maybe do 25 minutes of purist wrestling. Whereas they know if they're going out in front of an ICW crowd, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 matches because you've got to pace it, they're just, it's just going to be a total explosion of different things, top rope moves, table bumps, stuff like that. Stuff that if you went on a night out with your mates from work that didn't watch wrestling, you would know are going to capture their attention.
Yeah.
And that's really what ICW is all about, if you ask me.
Definitely. I think, you go on to it there about the whole point of ICW and, what it means to the fans and things like that. But obviously with yourself, when you're in that ring, you've got a duty of care for the competitors that are in there. So is there anything that you look out for during the match in regards to, possible injuries, tweaks, things like that? Or is your focus, as we said before, fully on what's going on in your ear?
No, I mean, you've really got, as I say, it's a bit of a balancing act, a juggling act rather, when it comes to being a referee in the ring when you're wearing an earpiece, because you've got the guys talking to you in your ear, and then you've obviously got to focus on the safety of the guys in the ring as well. So no, you're the first point of contact for any kind of injury that occurs in the ring. So if anything goes wrong, you immediately check the wrestler, check to see if they can communicate verbally and physically, communicate with backstage, and they'll then go back to you and tell you what needs to happen, basically, because you're really there to either determine if they can continue, if they've really been injured, and if they have been injured, is it something that is going to stop the performance? Because although the show must always go on, and that's the kind of thing that people stick to, the reality is with wrestling, all it takes is one particular move. And maybe if you get up too quickly or you turn or something like that, then it could be the end of your career. So we've got a duty of care for these guys, more so in the past few years with all the kind of safety protocols that have come to light with bigger organizations like WWE. And thankfully with Sean and I having worked there for a short time, we were able to kind of bring that back and implement that into the stuff that we do at ICW. Having said that, they've also always had fantastic medics on hand, especially during these closed door shows. We've got a great guy called Kieran that works with us, and he's always in hand. Thankfully, with the benefit of doing closed door shows is that if something happens that I'm really worried about or Sean's really worried about, everything stops. We have Kieran come over, do a full check, and he'll be there to determine if these guys can continue or not. I'm not in any position, and neither Sean, to really make that call. If it's something that's as serious as maybe like a really bad landing, or maybe there isn't that communication there, maybe we think, no, I'm not convinced that this guy's fully here with us. We're not in any position to say, look, just continue wrestling, because ultimately that's when bad things happen. And thankfully, having a medic there that's fully qualified is able to make that call.
Yeah, so you've had to throw the X up at some point.
Yeah. I mean, that's the main communication method for telling backstage, listen, we need a medic out here. And WWE do it as well. And again, it goes back to that respect thing, especially with fans. They know that if somebody's hurt, there's a duty of care there. And the referee's, main thing here is making sure that he can get up and go back up the road to his family at the end of the night.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not continuing a match to do a couple of clotheslines and a big finish. Like, I'm sorry, like once there's an injury, that's out the window. I'd rather see a guy walk the next day. Definitely. So
there was always that time last year. I'm not going to mention the promotion, I'm not going to mention none, but there was the wrestler took a nasty bump, and the referee threw up the X sign. However, they were told to continue. I mean, that's not right, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, it's difficult. Again, it's a juggling act. So you're ultimately there to make the call. And if somebody's in, and I can only talk from my personal experience, again, no criticism whatsoever. And you can never, ever, ever criticize somebody when you don't know all the details, and I don't.
Yeah.
So just from my perspective, if for whatever reason I was convinced wholeheartedly that somebody was injured to the point of this affecting their safety, and they were talking to my ear saying just continue, I would just stop the match and get it checked. That is what it is. But I mean, you don't know what the people in the earpiece have been saying. You don't know if the wrestlers maybe said something. You don't know if the wrestlers. We've got a few checks we do, as I say, to get physical communication that a guy's okay. Obviously, you want to maintain that selling, so it might look like a guy's really hurt, but it's wrestling and it's show business and everything else. So it might be that he's physically communicated that he's okay with the referee, but to viewers watching at home, it's this referee didn't do his job. Yada yada yada. So you're walking a fine line, and you're always going to get criticism. But the main thing to do is just ensure the safety of the wrestlers, and you're golden at the end of the day. You can't really go wrong. Somebody will probably at some point get annoyed at you if you call off a match. But as I said, I'd rather see them go up the road at the end of the day than be in the hospital at the end of the night.
Totally agree. So my last one, I've got another question. I've got about this Triple H stuff, but we'll come to that later on. So there's a two-parter here really. So if you could choose any match that you've seen over the years that you have not called, so what would be the one match you wish you were able to call or to referee? Sorry, and also what advice would you have for any young inspiring referees?
Right, I'll leave the advice one. I'll make that totally separate so I can, because it's such a large question, to try and answer what match would you. I mean, obviously everybody that's a referee would go immediately to Undertaker and Brock, that streak. Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, as I say, WrestleMania 21. I mean, the triple threat with him and Randy Orton, Kurt Angle at Mania 22. I mean, that's me, showing myself.
You're just telling us your favorite matches.
Right? I mean, that's what. Again, I mean that's when you. I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in all the sort of stuff that you come across when you're in the wrestling business. But a lot of people think it's a bad thing, but I don't think, everybody get into this as a fan. So I think you're kind of kidding yourself if you're saying that you don't want to work with the people that you idolized as heroes growing up. Thankfully, I mean, I was able to work with Kurt Angle and Rey Mysterio. Kurt once with ICW and Rey twice, thankfully. So it's difficult. I mean, I would be sitting here all day if I was just telling you matches I wanted to referee. I would having known the guys that are working for NXT UK just now, and you've got an incredible team there of men and women, it always looks a total buzz when you see the main events for the UK title, especially at a takeover with fans. They are some of the most exciting shows WWE put on, in an entire year. So something like that as well, to even have, been afforded the honour of working there once was incredible, but to be in a position where they trust a referee like they have done for, your Tom Scarboroughs, Chris Sharps, I think that would be a massive honour, regardless of the participants just being chosen to referee that UK title match. Sean's already had he's already done it for WWE in an ICW ring, which was at Shug's House Party 4. He refereed the UK title match in a fatal 4-way, so he's halfway there. So I'm sure, no doubt, in the next couple of years we'll see him in a main event on WWE television.
Very good. And advice?
Advice, everybody says it, but ears open, eyes shut, mouth closed, something like that. Door shut, garage door open, something like that. Mouth shut and ears open would be the best advice I think anybody can give you. But also, I mean, know when to speak up, which is a bit contradictory. But I think, if you've been in the industry for a long time, that doesn't necessarily mean you're in a position to tell somebody, 10, 15, 20 years down the line that they're wrong and you're right. But I think having the experience that if you are sitting on the learning tree of someone, if you've got a question or you disagree with someone, there's a way of putting that across that isn't, passive aggressive or anything like that.
Exactly.
So I think it's probably a mix of knowing when to, just keep your mouth shut and listen. And if you've got a question that's going to improve the ability of your performance, then speak up and ask that, because ultimately you don't ever want to miss an opportunity where you could have asked somebody that's further along in the game than you, how to improve, and you didn't take it. So that would be my advice.
Before Faz asked the question, we were talking about good ICW moments, and I was itching to ask this question because we spoke about it with Simon last week. Triple H arriving at Cardiff. Talk about that, because that must have been something else.
Yeah, crazy. That's another one that nobody really knew about until he was there. And I don't think many people, even the guys at the back door, knew until he was there. As I said, we've always had a working relationship with the WWE. So there was talk of obviously something happening because they were doing the Motor Point Arena, I want to say, that night. And we were doing the Tram Shed, which, by the way, is one of my favourite venues when we tour because it had just been done up the first time we done it. I feel like it just opened. I don't think it was actually a music venue before we ran it for very long. So everything was brand new, great staff, great venue, cool location. So yeah, they were in the city that night anyway. And because that working relationship was there, I think it was just, again, goes back to that respect thing. Triple H thought he would show up, made a point of going around absolutely everybody on the roster and shaking their hand, from crew to wrestlers to ring crew. He went out of his way to say hi to everybody. And that, I mean, literally all the way up through the locker room, through the corridor, because I was at a back exit somewhere. Sometimes on these tours, you just grab a space where you can get changed. Made an effort to walk all the way through the corridor to get everybody. So can't speak highly enough of him and what he did that day. And then we thought that was it. We thought he was just coming to have, a quick chat with Mark. And then, next thing you've got Motorhead playing and green lights are getting queued up on this. It was when, we're standing at Gorilla and I see our sound tech, queuing up what's coming. And I'm like, right, okay. And I was actually stood at the curtain ready to go out for the next match because I didn't really know what was happening. And you're always just where you need to be for the next bit. Excuse me.
Was Pete Dunne advertised to be there? I can't remember that one.
No, he was a surprise as well. But we didn't show his Tron on the screen. So I think he may have had new music, or it was something like his music wasn't completely, the crowd weren't completely familiar with it. So until he actually walked through the curtain, nobody knew who that was going to be either. So that was one massive pop. And I'm standing at the curtain, really not knowing what's happening. And then Motorhead starts to play, and Dallas has obviously said the Triple H thing. Triple H comes up, walks past me, and he's just stood in front of me, with a water bottle, ready to go out. And in terms of, you asked earlier, what was that moment where you kind of stand and go, what is happening here? That's probably the biggest one for me. Again, ICW and the team have worked hard to be in a position where things like that happen. Nobody ever thought when we started out that that's something, that's a goal. But when these things happen, he
must be the only one that did.
If you ever have him on, I mean, it doesn't take you long. Well, it depends on when you come across him, but it doesn't take you long to start believing him, because some of the stuff he hits out with that you originally or you initially think seems a bit mad. But he mentioned the hydro to me before it had even been really discussed in a formal setting. And I remember thinking, well, I don't see this happening. And then it happened 3 times.
Yeah.
And you kind of think, well, there's something to this guy. And I think if you've got a businessman that knows where he wants to go and how he's going to get there, then really depends on if you believe in this whole manifestation thing. But I think if you manifest something strongly enough, you put enough energy out there, and you've got a pretty strong strategic plan of how you're going to get from A to B, then it's only a matter of time. So for Triple H to kind of be put into that plan, on half an hour's notice was incredible. I mean, what a morale boost as well, because it was on the road to Fear and Loathing at the Hydro, and tours are incredible in of themselves, but to have that morale boost of Triple H showing up, going around everybody saying hi, and then going out in front of the live crowd, it was fantastic for everybody involved. And I think it did a lot for us as a team heading into one of the biggest shows of the company's history.
Definitely.
It was one of the best moments I've ever seen. I remember that happening very vividly.
It was one of those ones as well where I had people from school that didn't watch wrestling messaging me. You've got your aunts and uncles, talking about it. It's on BBC News. It's in the front.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Front page of BBC News. It's everywhere. And you've got people talking about it. And again, that goes back to Drew helping ICW. Mm-hmm. Triple H didn't have to do that.
No.
He's not done it for anybody else.
No, exactly.
Like it's not like he was doing a tour of indie companies.
Imagine.
And again, I hate using the term indie companies, and I use it as a kind of general term because I know Simon last week said I don't really know what qualifies as an indie company these days, but it's just that kind of term. I mean, ICW has worked hard to, receive the credibility it rightly deserves, but
definitely.
He didn't have to do that, Triple H, and to show up, go around everybody, go out in front of the live crowd, and put over ICW and its roster was one of those kind of defining moments for not only the guys in the back but the company as a whole, and the fans to be involved in that was really special.
And it sounds a bit horrible saying it, but he never got anything out of it. So it just shows you how, he, like you say, he didn't have to do it. He's not gained anything by doing it, but ICW gained, so much out of it, so much viewing. A lot more eyes went to that company just by that one little thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a respect thing, and I think, being a smart businessman, it contributes to building that brand that ultimately is going to be on the network one day. So, yeah, can't say enough good things about it, and hopefully one of many to come.
Definitely. Exactly.
So
before we move on to our fan questions, we like to wrap it up with the same question, but we usually get the same answer: fans back in an arena. What are your goals going forward for? I wouldn't even just say the next 12 months, but maybe the next 2-3 years.
I think it's probably pretty crazy to think that anybody's in control of the fans coming back. So while I would love it, I think stuff that I'm in control of that I would like to see is, as we discussed, probably more backstage duties with ICW. Do quite a few things at the moment in the office. I'd like to kind of expand upon that, maybe do something else to help contribute to the product. Obviously, NXT UK is a massive thing I would like to work towards again. Pretty friendly with the guys and girls that work there at the moment. So I think, with a couple of more years behind me and some more hard work, I think hopefully if there's a space that comes available, Sean and I would be
ready
in the queue or ready, something like that. Sitting by our phones for 12 months or something like that. I don't know, not to be too eager, but I would love that. I mean, they've got a fantastic team at the moment, and they've recently just taken on a guy called Rich, who's fantastic. He'd been working in the UK scene for a few years. Tom, Artemis, Chris Sharp, incredible team of referees there. So it would be an honour to join them again. But I think, and again, I'm not in control of this, but just to get out of this kind of crazy scenario that we're in just now with everybody kind of happy and healthy, I think it's obviously important that everybody adheres to the restrictions that are in place just now. But I think with a kind of increased focus on people's mental health and making sure that everybody knows that there's a pair of ears there if you ever want to talk to somebody, being able to realise that, and I think to make it a personal goal for myself, just making sure that the people that I love and work with know that I'm there to kind of talk to, because if anything's shown us from the last few years, it's that you don't really know what other people are going through.
Definitely.
So I would say one of my personal goals is to be that person that people know they can come to if they want to speak to them. So. Best
answer we've had by far.
So before we wrap it all up, we've obviously got a few of our fans have came in with some questions for yourself. So Sean Wright has asked, what was your favourite match you've ever been involved with? And Andrew Morrison has came with, tell us about your time. How was your time in NXT UK?
Okay, favourite match. So there's a few. There's my mind always immediately goes to Lionheart and Jackie Polo at Barrymania. Number 2, excuse me.
You've not got COVID, have you?
No, thankfully not. Listen, the only place I'm going to at the moment is Asda every 2 weeks, so I think everybody's fine. But yeah, so I would say my favourite match would be, not in order, but Lionheart and Jackie Polo, Barrymania, which was the second one that they done. Everything about that was it was crazy. Like, that crowd in Barrowlands is always a mix of people. It's similar to SWG3 actually, that are maybe friends of friends that don't watch wrestling. You've got your people that sometimes you've just get serial gig goers that just see stuff and just book tickets.
Yeah.
People just looking for a crazy night out in Glasgow on a Sunday night. So a mix of the fans, the storyline going in there between Jackie and Adrian, and the match that they had, everything just kind of contributed to having a kind of well-rounded, excellent 15 to 20 minutes of storytelling. So that's always up there. One of the more recent ones is Joe Coffey and Liam Thompson for the Zero G title at Shugs 6, I want to say. But in the same weekend, you had Steve A. Boy and Wolfgang for the world title. But then, of course, the minute you start talking about the world title, you have to talk about Lionheart winning at the Hydro, which I think, for obvious reasons, kind of takes the top spot.
Yeah,
that was a special moment, that as well, because he deserved that.
It's literally a culmination of 15 to 20 years of hard work.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy was in every show that I was working on from the age of 13, 14, always at the top. I mean, even when he had his neck injury, he came back, and while he maybe wasn't at the top of the card again, he was up there pretty damn quick, and he knew, he was told by Mark Dallas that he had to work his way back up to being in that position, because he knew that maybe that value wasn't there so much anymore, because he'd had a performance that he didn't look at as being, where it needed to be when he came back and wrestled Jackie at the first Barrowland show he was back on. I think he was expecting something totally different when he went out there. Yeah. But sometimes the mind's willing, but the body isn't.
Yeah, exactly. I always think when you think of ICW, the two wrestlers that come to my mind are Jack Jester and Lionheart. For me, anyway.
Totally. I mean, that's what I was thinking of there as well. Yeah. I mean, there was a reason they were picked for that, the road to wrestler thing.
They just epitomise ICW in a nutshell, those two.
Yeah, so I mean, to go from being a top guy for so many years, having your neck injury, an injury that most people would be put on the shelf for, indefinitely. He came back, and whilst he wasn't at the top of the card, he was out there pretty quickly. And I mean, not to name any names, but he came back, and most people would probably, I mean, obviously, had to shake off a few cobwebs, but there were matches he would have with guys that, I'm not saying they would try to take advantage of him, but they would just be like, listen, we're doing this, this, and this. And Adrian was in a position in wrestling and in life to be able to go, no, here's what's happening, and we're going to work around my limitations at the moment, which ultimately kind of supercharged him to being at the top of that card again. Yeah. And when he got to main event in the Hydro, I think, if there was ever a guy to get it, it was him. Yeah. Having his parents there. And I watched it back again recently, and I forgot that he jumped into the crowd to go and give his mum a hug. And it's difficult to talk about it without even getting choked up, man, because
they're the moments that matter, aren't they?
Yeah, it's crazy. And if you'd met his mum and dad, you would know how much they loved their son. Do you know what I mean? And when we get backstage, they gave him a hug, and everything was kind of, that was, to come full circle is such a term that everybody uses, but it really did come full circle that night.
And I've got a few guys in the indie, genuine indie scene in Scotland, and they had the chance to meet Adrian, and what a guy was. Like, he's always a person that he wouldn't think twice about helping someone in regards to giving them advice, if it's just a chat or to help improve or whatever it was. He was always the first to come up to that person and say, I'll give you however long you need to improve, and what is, like, passing on his wisdom as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Adrian, the guy, and Lionheart, the wrestler, were so kind of interchangeable at times. And while he would be a sarky bugger at times, and he maybe would do things that would ruffle a few feathers, he knew that at the end of the day, if a friend needed him, he would be there. And wrestlers likewise. I mean, he would never go out of his way to try and show anybody up, to try and have a match that made him look good, but not somebody else. So yeah, I mean, like everybody had his flaws, and we all made fun of him for it. He made fun of us for it. And there was that kind of back and forth there at times. And God, would he get on your nerves at times like everybody else. But equally, as I said, if you were ever having a tough time, one of the first guys that would drop you a message or give you a call would be Adrian.
Yep. And then we'll go Andrew's question, your NXT time.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. It was one of those ones. It's the same as ICW recording this closed door shows. I mean, it was the first official NXT UK weekend taping that they did. Which was
it the BT Sports Studio that you were at?
No. So this was way back. I mean, you're talking 2018, July, the tail end of July. But then it didn't air until they had announced the network would be the host for it, things like that. And then once NXT UK finally started to air, the matches that I refereed didn't air for like another so many weeks after that. So a pretty long process. But yeah, it was 2 days, 3 days in total in the end of July. and yeah, I mean, they gave me a couple of matches, and yeah, I learned a lot. Chad Patton, as I say, was the referee that was kind of overseeing things that weekend, and I mean, what more can you say about it? It's totally priceless to even have been given the opportunity to go down and try out, but on top of that, be given televised matches that you would be on and work with, you know, these guys and girls that have worked hard to build the UK scene, because it was all UK talent, which was excellent as well. And it kind of that alleviated a few of the worries going in, because you think anybody that thinks of a WWE tryout, you think you're going to be working with maybe people that you don't know, or you go into it not knowing everything. But thankfully,
and being Scottish, you've not got the language barrier, eh?
yeah. Well, unfortunately, I never worked with any of the Scottish guys that weekend, so I had to watch. But yeah, I mean, it was incredible. There's nothing really to say that you can't think of already. I mean, it's something that you dream of doing. I mean, I'm just so thankful that at the age of 23, I was afforded the opportunity to do something that a lot of people don't get ever.
Definitely.
And if for whatever reason that is the last time that I ever go there or ever work with the company, to say that I did it at all is incredible. What an achievement.
Yeah, well, we've got full faith, mate. You'll be back. Yeah, you'll be back 100%.
Fingers crossed. As I say, they've got an incredible team just now, so it's really just time and if that opportunity comes up. So the best thing that any referee or any wrestler can do is just be ready, so that if you ever get that call, then you're able to be slotted in.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Thomas. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, pal. Hopefully, you know, we'll get you on again in a few months and just check in, see how you are. But you take care of yourself, pal. And
let him plug.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, go on. Sorry.
It won't take you very long. No, not at all. It won't take you very long to find me. Everything on my socials is all Thomas Kearins. So Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. So. Yeah, you'll find me pretty easily. But thanks very much, guys. It's been great chatting to you. And
I have to say, Thomas, one of the most interesting ones that we've done. Has been a great thing to see about the referee's insight, because, like I say, it's something that's so important, but it's something that's really talked about.
No, I really appreciate that, guys. It's some great questions there as well. I mean, like everybody, I mean, we've not been doing lots of these at the moment because everything's kind of been upside down with COVID. So it's been great to chat for the past hour, and I really appreciate your questions. You've obviously got a keen interest, as you say. So I look forward to listening to the next few. I've listened to the last couple, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing who you've got on next.
Cheers, buddy.
Thanks very much, guys.
I'm going to be next ICW. We'll catch up at your next ICW event.
Absolutely. I know. I'll see you in a couple of years. Hopefully sooner than later, guys. Thanks very much.
Take care.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Yes, that was brilliant. Another amazing guest, as you said, Stu. Learning just about the viewpoint of a referee. It's something we've wanted to know for a while. So getting to hear what it takes to actually put together a match and their responsibilities and, you know, the earpiece and what actually goes on in those scenarios, just fantastic. And great questions as well from the guests. So cheers for that.
And if anyone, by the way, if I went away a few times, I apologise. My mother-in-law was trying to fucking FaceTime, so that was annoying.
No, you didn't go away. What happened was you were still there, but you went from the bottom to the top. So now my editing was going to be very easy, very simple, and very quick to do. And now it's going to take me another half an hour.
I always go from the bottom to the top, baby. That's how I work.
So before we leave, I'll just give another shout out to our sponsor. It's wrestleandpins.bigcartel.com, wrestleandpins.bigcartel.com. That's WRASSLIN. Pins.bigcartel.com. They've got pins like The Undertaker, Stone Cold, Bret Hart, Razor Ramon, and they've got more and more coming. Head on over to all their social media pages, enter the promo code IOHPOD15 at checkout for 15% off your order. That's IOHPOD15 for 15% off your order. And also remember, we have our own t-shirts at Pro Wrestling Tees. Just head on over there and put "It's Our House Pod" in, and you'll see our brand new shirt. If you head on over to all our social media platforms, you'll see Chris showing off his physique with the t-shirt on. It's got that logo there behind. It's a good t-shirt, very bright, very colourful. So head on over. It really helps the channel out as well if you get on it there with Stu and his dog.
Yeah, brilliant Kobe's times. Getting one. I'll get Kobe one.
Yeah, well, I might just use that as the thumbnail, just the talk.
Kobe, you're going to be the thumbnail, pal. Right? He's been in the room for about 20 minutes. My wife came in and just locked him in. I was like, I never want. What was I going to say? I was going to say something. Oh, fuck it, who cares? Oh, that was it. If anyone's wondering why we're not talking about the Royal Rumble, it's because this is a Sunday and it's now currently 7:20 on
UK
Sunday.
time.
So we've not got a clue.
No.
So I've put something out on Twitter. So hopefully this is going to happen. My prediction is Brock going to win it, right? And then entrants 1 to 29 eliminate each other. And it just means Brock has to walk up, enter the ring, and he's won.
Didn't Meltzer say that Brock hasn't signed the contract though?
Well, Brock's going to be there tonight.
You think?
Brock's going to be there tonight.
On Sunday, you mean? Just when people listen to this on Wednesday.
Brock was there. Guaranteed. Brock's won it. Congratulations, Brock. Congratulations, my boy. You know what I mean?
So, Mr. Lawson, do you want to plug your social media, pal? Because
Yes.
I'm hopefully I can have it there in the corner, but you don't know what the rendering's going to be like.
It should be just here if Faz has done his job right. He's only got one job, and that is at S Lawson 1417. So at S Lawson 1417.
Yep, and for all my social media, it's at Faz's Thoughts. That's FAZZAS Thoughts. And then for the pod, it's just at It's Our House Pod. And our good friend, obviously our buddy, who we love very much, head on over to at PWCDs for all your AEW drama, because he absolutely loves it. We love you, buddy. Take care of yourself, mate. So we'll see you all in the next one. Take it easy, guys.
Bye-bye.